Welcome to this introduction video of Lean and Green International, the leading carbon reduction program in transport and logistics. We work on accelerating the transition towards sustainable logistics, and we do so through collaboration with and within our community of front-running companies. This introduction video tells you why, what, and how to do it. Let's start with why. Why carbon footprinting in logistics? Followed by what is Lean and Green, the requirements per star, and how to achieve those stars yourself. My name is Dirk van der Lee, Program Manager of Lean and Green International. Please don't hesitate to contact me or one of my colleagues if you have any questions during or after this video. We'll be happy to help or explain more about the program. Carbon footprinting is about calculating and allocating carbon emissions from all transport and logistical operations. So why carbon footprinting in logistics with Lean and Green? This image shows in an artful way the urgency of the changing climate. It shows the global temperatures over the past 150 years, in which you can see the Earth heating up, and rapidly as well. In 2019, some years after the Paris Climate Agreement, the European Union presented the so-called Green Deal, a roadmap to tackle climate change on an international scale. The plan includes carbon reduction targets for companies and countries, tax measures like the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism and ETS, zero emission zones in major cities throughout Europe, and standardization in calculation and reporting, including carbon emissions in logistics, using ISO 14003 and the CSR directive. And last but not least, a price on carbon through the fuel emission rights. The CSRD will require companies to not only report their own emissions, but also from outsourced transport and logistics. So the Scope 1 data from transport and logistics service providers become valuable to producers and shippers. ISO 14083 sets the standard for how to calculate and allocate these supply chain emissions. ISO 14083 is an international standard for allocation of CO2 to a customer, cargo, or activity. The key principles are to report on the methodology that was used, the data quality and percentage of primary data, the source of the data and input used. Also, the distance for allocation, which can be either greater circle distance or shortest feasible distance. Please check carbonfootprinting.org for more information on this topic. So why are companies participating in the Lean and Green program? Well, to show they're taking responsibility as an organization with actual achieved carbon reduction and ability to report this to supply chain partners. Also in the hunt for talent and to indicate to a new generation that sustainability is an important topic for your company. Also because awareness is growing from consumers to boardrooms. And if you make a statement on sustainability, be sure you can validate these green claims. Let me tell you a little bit more about the Lean and Green program. Lean and Green was founded in 2008 by Connect. Connect is a Dutch network of key actors in mobility and logistics, collaborating towards innovation and sustainable accessibility. Today, Lean and Green is the leading international program for sustainability and optimization in logistics, showing that profitability and sustainability can go hand in hand. The program was and is developed in collaboration with its participating companies. Through annual monitoring and reporting of emissions, the participants can achieve verified recognition for achieving their CO2 reduction targets. Lean and Green makes impact through national partners in 16 countries in Europe and North America, and a community of over 600 companies who join on either a national or international level. Lean and Green consists of 3 building blocks. In essence, Lean and Green is about recognition. Recognition for verified carbon reduction, allowing you to be transparent about this in the supply chain. And in doing this reporting, companies gather insight on how to calculate and report and reduce emissions and further optimize their logistics. But from the start, Lean and Green has been a community, spread across the entire supply chain with carriers, shippers and logistics service providers, all sharing knowledge and experience to achieve an acceleration in sustainability. We service this community by organizing events, articles and collaboration with our partners. Up next, what are the requirements per lean and green star? Now it might get a bit more technical. We start with the first lean and green star. You can achieve the first lean and green star if you can demonstrate a CO2 reduction of 20% in a maximum of 5 years. And we're looking at the KPI CO2 per transported unit. That unit can be either tons, loading meter, roll container, pallet, and so on, just what applies for your organization and to optimize your planning. If you then look at the scope requirements of the first star, you must include at least 50% of your outbound volume in the calculation and analysis. So for the first star, you only need annual totals on cargo, volume, and emissions or fuel data. And last but not least, the energy used by your logistic locations. The data quality must be at least bronze, which means that you can also work with key figures or estimates, or as it's called, secondary data. In addition, you must also describe the measures you have taken, and as an example for the first star, you can think of internal and operational measures that lead to greater efficiency, but also fuel-saving measures for your fleet and your planning. In other words, mainly internal measures and low-hanging fruit. On to the second star. For the second star, you have to demonstrate an additional 10% reduction in a maximum of 3 years. Again, looking at the same CO2 per transported unit as KPI. The scope requirements will increase to at least 65% of your outbound volume. And from the second star on, you no longer just look at the annual totals, but you make an analysis based on shipment level data. You might need carbon footprint tooling such as BigMile to do these analyses. We'll tell you more about this tool later on. For fuel, you can still work with annual totals, but the data quality of this has to be increased from bronze to silver, meaning primary data on your annual totals. For example, total liters of diesel or total emissions. And also the energy used by your logistical locations. In terms of measures, the second star includes improved data quality, optimization, and cooperation and collaboration with customers and clients for further optimization and, for example, sustainable energy and innovation projects. If you want to achieve the third star for lean and green, you must demonstrate an additional 5% reduction in a maximum of 2 years. The scope will again increase to 75% of the transported volume. And for fuel, just like the second star, you can still work with annual totals, consumed or total emissions. In terms of measures, it goes a step further for the third star. You have to describe measures that are about, for example, horizontal collaboration, improvement within its supply chain, model shift or zero-emission vehicles. At the moment, the fourth star is the highest achievable star at the lean green. To achieve this, you must demonstrate a total reduction of 55% by 2030. With the fourth star, the scope is at least 85% of your transported volume, which you can also calculate at shipment level data with tooling such as BigMile. For fuel, you calculate using total consumption per month instead of per year, based on vehicle level data. In terms of measures, you look back to the measures you took at the third star and describe at least 2 additional measures in the field of sustainability, collaboration, or innovation. So how can you actually achieve these wonderful stars? If you want to start with Lean and Green and you are not yet a participant, you can register through the website or through one of the national partners. You will determine your scope percentage, which flows will be part of the analysis and which will be left out. You will collect and analyze the logistical data and describe all the reduction and optimization measures that have contributed to your achievement. I'll explain later on the other 4 steps in this presentation. In the online My Lean and Green portal that some national partners will offer for participants, you can record all the necessary steps. This is an example of the scope table to record all your flows. This helps you determine your scope and, for example, divide it into different flows like your own assets in scope and outsourced transport out of scope. This table will automatically calculate your scope percentage to help you comply with the star requirement. If the portal is not available, the national partner will provide the documentation necessary for your project. A more basic way to calculate your scope is in Excel, stating the same information and calculating the percentage of the volume you select in scope for analysis. The scope can also help you define what data is needed for further analysis on shipment level if you are applying for the second star or higher. Lean and Green uses 3 types of data quality: bronze, silver and gold. Bronze data quality includes the use of secondary data for volume or fuel emission data, like for example estimates, key figures or sector standards. Silver and gold data quality includes the use of primary data for volume and fuel emission data. Silver data quality requires shipment level data and annual totals for fuel or emissions. The use of sample data is allowed under circumstances. Gold data quality requires shipment level data and fuel or emission data per vehicle per month. What data do you need for carbon calculation and allocation? For calculating your emissions, like for example for the first star, you need total volume, total fuel or emissions, and energy use of your logistical locations. In some cases, you might need sample data or sector standards to complete the calculations. For the first star, the secondary data is accepted. Allocating emissions is done with shipment level data, and typically the data analysis requires tooling or software. In addition to volume and the fuel data, you require origin and destination. More detailed and better quality data will provide better insight, like for instance modality and vehicle ID. Once you have determined the scope, you can get started with the Lean and Green dashboard. Determine the year for the base measurement, collect your data for the following years, for example tonnage, liters of diesel and energy consumption of your warehouses. And the CO2 emissions are calculated using the available emission factors for your country or region. In this example, the number leads to a base measurement KPI of 17.13 kilograms of CO2 per transported ton. The following years show the reduction path towards the required 20% for the first Lean and Green star. If these data points can all be verified in an audit, this dashboard is actually enough to achieve the first star. But what about allocating emissions for the second, third and fourth star? More on that through BigMile.
Welcome, my name is Sven Poot and I've been a business development manager at BigMile for over 3 years. As a business development manager, I assist companies in navigating regulations and explaining how BigMile can help. In addition to my desire to make the world a little bit better, I have a background in logistics and IT. At BigMile, I've been able to merge these 3 aspects. But enough about me. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey in the fascinating world of BigMile CO2 calculations and reporting. Let's talk about our company history and key figures. BigMile was born after the Paris Agreement of 2015. All world leaders agreed to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. In order to achieve this goal, reducing CO2 emissions is crucial. Until 2015, it wasn't possible to accurately calculate CO2 emissions. So the government, in collaboration with Top Sector Logistics, decided to initiate a project to understand the carbon footprint of the logistics sector. This initiative began with a project group called BigMile. We started by creating an Excel sheet with calculations to determine the exact amount of CO2 emitted in transport-related activities. After 2 years, we received inquiries from companies asking if we could process more shipments. That's when we replaced our Excel sheet with an application that included all modalities and geolocations. In 2019, Lean and Green joined forces with BigMile, which meant that BigMile became the instrument of the Lean and Green reduction program. A year later, in 2020, BigMile was officially established as a limited liability company. Fast forward 4 years, we now serve over 100 clients worldwide with a team of 50 motivated employees based in Marsen. But what is BigMile? Well, BigMile is a CO2 calculation and allocation tool that allows you to calculate CO2 emissions across your entire supply chain. Additionally, you are able to analyze the results, make reduction plans, and generate reports for your clients with whom you quickly but securely can share necessary information. This can be done manually or integrated via an API connection. As I mentioned earlier, Big Mile originated from the 2015 Paris Agreement. It was recognized that the world is facing a crisis. Hence, the Paris Agreement was formed, outlining commitments to reduce CO2 emissions. Europe took action by introducing the Green Deal, requiring large companies to report on their environmental, social, and governance impacts. This obligation is codified in the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, otherwise known as the CSRD. Big Mile focuses on the environmental aspect, with a major focus on the transportation sector. These emissions need to be calculated while following the ISO 14083 standard. Why CO2 calculations? Zooming in on the CSRD, we find that 50,000 companies within the European Union will be required to report on the CO2 emissions as of next year. These 50,000 companies have chain partners from which they will ask for data about emissions. This allows them to calculate the so-called Scope 3 emissions, the emissions from outsourced activities. In practice, this means that all organizations doing business with these large corporations will need to produce CO2 reports, and that's where Big Mile can assist you. Then, more about the methodology. To ensure that the calculations can be used for reporting, it's essential to use the correct methodology. Within the European Union, there are various methodologies available, but we always recommend using the GLAC framework as it best aligns with international supply chains. Once you've determined the desired framework, it's our responsibility to allocate the correct CO2 emissions to the corresponding activities in the transport chain. All is based on the ISO 14083 standard. This is the worldwide standard to calculate and allocate the emissions in logistics. Especially with upcoming regulations, it's crucial to be able to compare apples with apples. Alright, we just discussed the methodology briefly. Now let's delve into the data we need for this process. To calculate CO2 emissions, we require several data points: the origin, the destination, the cargo, modality, and the fuel consumption. If we only have the origin, destination, freight, and modality, we rely on industry key figures extracted from the GLAC framework. Ideally, we also have the fuel consumption data, enabling us to precisely calculate emissions based on the type of fuel used in each engine. As I mentioned earlier, there are different methods for calculating CO2. Let's elaborate on that right now. We can work with different data levels: bronze data, silver data, and gold data. Let's have a look at each of these levels in more detail. Bronze data refers to data calculated by using industry key figures. Here, fuel consumption is not required. Only origin, destination, freight, and mode of transportation are needed. Silver data requires fuel consumption data. This can be obtained in two ways: either by tracking the fuel consumption of your fleet over a period, or to a CPI, a carbon performance indicator. If you'd like more information on this, please feel free to send us an email and we will be happy to provide further details. Lastly, gold data indicates fuel consumption data per trip. Through our data sharing functionality, we aim to facilitate this process. For the latest updates, follow our LinkedIn channel, and I want to thank you all for viewing this video.
Once you have done your data analysis, you can describe your reduction and optimization measures in the online My Lean and Green portal. Simply choose from the list which measure you have taken and describe how that measure has worked for your organization based on a number of questions. If the portal is not available in your country, the national partner will provide the documentation necessary for your project. You have now completed steps 1 to 4, so I'll explain more about the next 4 steps: review, audit, recognition, and monitoring. Once you have completed steps 1 to 4, this will be assessed by the Lean and Green team and then verified by an independent party or accountant. If everything is approved, we will plan a visit or an event to award your company the achieved Lean and Green star. In the years that follow your star recognition, you will continue to annually monitor your carbon performance in the My Lean and Green portal or towards your national partner. Every year you update your scope, analyze the data, and every 3 years the data needs to be verified by an independent party or accountant. We can imagine by now you are excited to get started. So, what are the most important benefits of participating in Lean and Green? It is to achieve your reduction targets and report them to partners according to international standards like ISO and CSRD. To achieve recognition for your efforts and proudly share these. And of course, to become partner of the Lean and Green community. Big Mile is a partner of the Lean and Green program. Those who participate in the Lean and Green program can use the basic Big Mile version free of charge. This carbon analytics license is worth €750 and includes 5 analyses per year. The tool generates a report on PDF format and shows the participants carbon performance of the analyzed data in a validated way. For companies that wish to benefit from the full functionality and insights of Big Mile, we offer several package deals. More information can be found on our website. The use of Big Mile is not mandatory within the Lean and Green program. Tools need to comply with the ISO 14003 and can be used for the Lean and Green program. Please don't hesitate to contact me or one of my colleagues if you have any additional questions after this video. We'll be happy to help or explain more about the program. Thank you very much for watching and hope to talk to you soon.